The Noble Experiment, Temperance, and Prohibition is a new traveling exhibit currently in the Durham Gallery at the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. It chronicles the attempt of government to restrict the manufacturing and sale of alcohol for over 6 decades, starting in the later 1800s.
The exhibit is unique in the fact that it's a really sort of very interesting part of Canadian history. With temperance and prohibition and whatever, people probably have a much better idea of the prohibition era as opposed to the temperance. Temperance started back basically in the 1860s, 1870s, and became quite the movement as it got into the early 1900s, and especially the Christian Women's Temperance Union. And there was a local chapter here in the Sault. There was a temperance hotel here in the Sault where they held their meetings, and people would go and could stay at the hotel and so on, as long as they followed the rules of no drinking and and leading a proper lifestyle and whatever. It didn't work. The temperance movement, they realized that it really didn't. It wasn't going to work the way they had hoped it would, and then Prohibition came in, and Prohibition basically was the fact of making and manufacturing liquor and that for sale, and the liquor laws came in and the Liquor Act and whatever, and it was sort of that the manufacture was against the law. So that's where you get into the moonshine and the bootleggers and the bathtub gin and all of that kind of thing and so on and so forth. And there was a woman by the name of Lydia Pinkham that became quite prominent in the world of not bootlegging. She created a medicinal compound that was mainly used, that was geared towards women, and it was about 65% alcohol. So she made quite a bit of money, and her family, when she died in the 1890s, her estate was worth almost $500,000, which was a lot of money back in the day. And by 1925, it was worth probably about $10 million. So it did well.
Even during Prohibition, it was still fairly easy to get a drink if you knew where to look. Blind pigs or speakeasies opened everywhere, often in back rooms or hidden in basements. These establishments were often dingy and dirty, but owners made good money selling watered-down booze. Most customers were just ordinary people out to have a sociable drink and enjoy the thrill of dodging the law.
Well, I think what it is sort of the timeline and sort of that how long it really lasted when you think about it. And if it started back in the 1860s, it actually came all the way up into the 1930s. And then you get into, it was a lot stricter in the States, and it was a lot more lenient in Canada. And you actually that's when you started seeing the rum running and cross-border and the smuggling and so on. And especially in very close proximity, like Sault Ste. Marie's and Sault Ste. Marie, there was a lot more in areas that were close that way and so on, because it was easier at night to sort of row a boat across and whatever. So it does have an impact, but just nationally, but also locally. We had bootleggers here. We had so it does affect us locally as well. So it's kind of interesting.
By the mid-1820s, bootlegging had hit an all-time high. Whatever laws were passed, people found ways around them. The Attorney General declared that the Temperance Act was a failure. In an effort to put an end to bootlegging, the government itself went into business selling alcohol. In 1927, the government of Ontario opened 18 liquor stores across the province. As prohibition laws were repealed in province after province, the Noble Experiment came to an end.
It's an era of Canadian history that a lot of times you don't hear about, and it's sort of like, oh yes, I remember, I've heard that word, but I don't know if people really know what it meant or what it was all about and so on. So this is a chance for people to come in, read a little bit about it and so on, and it's got some humor built into it. It's got some, and it talks also in some of the early stages that actually people didn't drink milk and water and whatever because it wasn't like milk wasn't pasteurized. It couldn't be kept for a long period of time. Water was not purified. It was not always the healthiest. So watered down beer and watered down spirits was a common thing that was drank by everybody, even children. So it's a different world. It's a whole different lifestyle. So yeah, it's quite unique.
The Noble Experiment, Temperance, and Prohibition is now on until mid-September. For Shaw TV, I'm Jonathan Perrier.